Wow. I'm just amazed. I'm kind of just like really blown away. First, I just want to say thanks and honor Jamie and Pastor Brian. I know you told me not to call you Pastor Brian. He's a pastor, right? It's Pastor Brian. Just for saying yes, just for you guys. Like, I think it's amazing that you just said yes to God, and to you too, Jamie's wife. Like, for you guys opening your place here and doing this. Like, there's power in a yes. And so Pastor Brian asked me to come here and share my story today, my testimony. And you're going to hear a little bit about that yes. But sometimes the most supernatural thing you can do in interacting with the Lord is give him your yes. And you guys have all, and I love hearing the testimonies, right? Testimonies are powerful. And I'm assuming everybody in here knows the Lord, and everybody has a testimony. And we have to share those things, because your testimony is someone else's invitation to receive the same thing that the Lord has done for you, right? And so just to encourage you guys, from what you may think is a little thing to what we think are the big things, to just keep sharing those, because it's so powerful. And the fact that you asked me to come here and share my testimony, I'm super honored. So this is my wife, Celeste. She'll enter the story toward the end, but I'm going to back up and start at the beginning, because I know I have limited time, and Jamie knows I like to talk, so I'm going to try to talk as fast as I can and try to, I'll probably have to skip over a couple details here, but I'm going to try to hit the high level of my story for you guys. So I want to back it up. I'm originally from Northeast Ohio, okay? There's three kind of people that come from Ohio. There are people that can count and people that can't. So, just a little bit about where I'm from.
Some of you'll get that in a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. If you don't get that, you may be from where I'm from. I grew up in a little Mennonite town in Northeast Ohio, right in between Akron and Canton. Had and have great parents, hardworking people. But I grew up in an expression of Christianity that never actually taught me that I could know God. I was infused with information about God. I was taught things about him, but how many of you know that just because you know everything you possibly can know about George Bush, and it doesn't mean that if you knock on his door, he's going to open the door and say, "Great to see you." So knowing about someone and knowing someone are two totally different things. And I was filled with all of this knowledge and information, but as a kid, just whatever, God, all right, cool. Like, when you're a kid, you're concerned with one thing, and that's your own life. We have 3 kids right now, and all day long it's constantly, can I, can we, can I, can we? And it's great. I love their excitement for life, but it's just really funny that when you're little, when you're young, even till maybe even right now, maybe adults, right? We're concerned with us. And just a little bit about me. I've known Jamie for a little bit, and he can maybe attest to a little bit of this. I am a very enthusiastic person. You're probably picking that up already. I may be weirding some of you out a little bit. I apologize in advance. I see that there are no small children in here. The story will get a little bit weirder, but it's not a made-up story. It's a real story. And so I'm very enthusiastic about my life. I'm very enthusiastic about talking about what the Lord has done. I'm very enthusiastic every day. I'm excited about everything that's happening. My business, my friendships, my wife. My flight got canceled the other day, and I found a way to be happy about it. It was weird. I ended up in Chicago for the whole day waiting on a connection, and I'm stoked about life. I love this gift of life that I've been given. And it's important for me to say that, not that so that you can all look at this guy and go, "What's wrong with this dude?" But I didn't always used to be that way. And that's really a key part of the story. And when I was 18 years old, I was diagnosed with 2 mental illnesses, 2 very severe mental illnesses. And for any of you in here that know someone or yourself that has been diagnosed with a mental illness, they don't go away. They don't go away on their own. You can't walk it off. It's not something where you can just get medicine and be cured. A lot of times you're stuck the rest of your life mitigating that, monitoring it, and managing it with medicine or something else. And so my life got very dark at about 18 years old. And so when I was 18 years old, I was super concerned with myself and what was going to happen. So I was a senior in high school, and there were 2 pillars that were holding my life up at that time. And the first one was basketball. And I love the story about the young man that's hopefully coming to stay with you guys. I love sports. I love team sports. I'm sure there's people in here that either play team sports. I love what they embody. I love what they teach young people. Team sports were really impactful for me because they taught me how to learn my role. They taught me how to be a part of a team. They taught me how to not give up. They taught me how to belong to something that was bigger than just my own output or my own result. Love team sports. But for me, it got out of balance in that the team sport, the success that I was after in basketball became about my identity. My identity became attached to it. I became obsessed with it. And it's okay to have a passion, I believe, but I believe that all of our passions can become out of balance and turn into an idol. It's very common. We've all experienced it. But when you don't know the Lord, it's much harder to have those idols removed out of your life because that thing is God to you, right? So at 18 years old, I'm obsessed with basketball. If I'm not, if me and my friends aren't with our girlfriends, we're playing basketball. We're somewhere on the weekends finding 5-on-5. It just became life to us. And I was obsessed with proving myself, with finding a group of people that would love me. And if you boil it down, what I was really after in basketball, I was after love. I was after trying to find something and a group of people that would love me. But I had to work for it. And hard work's great, but love is not something you should ever have to work for. And so that was the first pillar, right? 2 pillars. This was the first pillar holding my life up. The second pillar holding my life up, like a lot of 18-year-old people who are stupid and young, was I had a girlfriend. Not her. But at 18 years old, your hormones are going like an adult. Really at 14 or 15. You are a full-blown adult, and you can procreate. Your body is ready your body is ready. Your mind is probably not ready. You could start a family, and so it's a very confusing time in our nation, in our culture, with adolescence, and I'm seeing this more and more happen. But I became obsessed with this relationship that I was in. And this became one of those other things where I was working so hard to get this girl that I was dating to feel about me the same way that I felt about her, that this became my idol. And the other piece of that story is I had developed a plan for my own life based off of basketball and based off of this girl. And these 2 things that I wanted so bad, I had mapped it out. I was gonna work really hard. I was gonna work my way into a starting spot on the team. I was going to get a D2 or a D3 scholarship, because let's be real, I'm not that tall. I knew I wasn't good enough to go D1. And I am going to just make it to graduation, and I'm going to get this girl to marry me, and her family is wealthy and well off, and I won't have to work so hard anymore. Right? I had built this plan. But we all do this. We all build an expectation in our mind for something that we want to happen. And this is why it's so hard to manage expectations, especially with young people, right? With little kids, with kids like ours. When you have an expectation for something and it gets missed, it's really icky, right? We all hate it. We hate it when our flights get canceled. We have an expectation that we're going to get on the flight. And it happens all the way from the little things all the way up to the big things. Everyone in here has had a big expectation missed, and it's really hard. It's even harder if God is just an idea to you and not a person that you're actually walking alongside. So at 18 years old, I am just building this plan for my life and building these expectations of how it's going to work out. And I remember it like it was yesterday. We were at an open gym. For those of you who know what that is, it's like the basketball team getting ready, running 5-on-5, people getting loose, ready to start the season. And I remember we're on a fast break, and I'm coming down the court, and I kick the ball to a buddy on my team. He puts up a shot, and I remember I cut to grab the rebound. I jump, I grab the ball, I come down, and I hear, just like that, another pop in my ankle. And I feel this jolt of pain go up my leg and into my spine. And I remember falling on the ground, grabbing my leg, just unable to breathe almost. The pain was so unbearable. And I remember it like a flashback. I could hear the muffled voice of the coach yelling, "Get the trainer in here! Get the trainer in here right now!" And so that turned into about a 2-hour scenario where I'm in and out of emergency rooms. They sent me to one, when we went to another. And hearing the doctor come in and say, well, there's no real easy way to say it, but you have a broken ankle, and you're going to miss probably most of the basketball season. Now, you think, okay, kid dealing with an injury, not a big deal. But everybody responds to letdown differently. And the tools that you have in your tool belt to manage that letdown are all different for all of us. We've all seen people fly off the handle and But for me, not having any spiritual tools, not having this relationship with the Lord where I could say, Lord, I'm so frustrated. Oh, but I know, like you, Sarah, I'm able to open your Bible and you have this history with God and those words. I didn't have that. And so what happened was I became angry, and like one big clenched fist, I became very inward. And I didn't have tools for processing that anger, and the anger just kind of grew inside of me. And so all I've got left, this one pillar, is just crumbled down. Basketball's pretty much done. Well, you would think, oh man, what's the next thing that's going to happen? Well, I ended up making it through almost the whole season. I rehabbed, and I got back to playing again right before this big tournament at the end of the year, and I'm pumped. And I'm able to cut on my leg again, and everything's great. I can plant, I can jump, my shot's fine. And we do a box out drill. And I love box out drills, but I don't anymore. Because as we're doing the box out drill, a buddy comes, and you're supposed to check him and then turn. And my hand hits him to check him. And the weirdest thing ever, you can see it, right? Like, see how this knuckle is a little bit more raised up compared to on this side? This bone breaks and snaps right here in my hand. And at first I was like, and your adrenaline's going, I just played it off. They pass me the ball, we're doing a shooting drill next. I do this like limp-wristed thing, and the coach shouts out an expletive, what the bleep's the matter with you, Triola? And I was like, nothing, coach, I'm fine. He goes, get over here, and he grabs my hand, and he looks at it, he goes, you need to go see the trainer right away. So after another set of x-rays, I find out that my basketball career professionally is over at that point. Now, as an 18-year-old, I was angry before about my ankle, but I had this restored sense of hope. And now it was thrown completely out the window. Now the anger went so far inward in me that things started getting really dark. I started having really dark thoughts. And so this pillar that was now like this is completely collapsed, and I've got one more pillar holding my life up, and this is this relationship with my girlfriend. So now I go into overdrive, and I am just focused with everything that I am, trying to keep this girl, trying to get her to love me. And really, like, we're 18 years old, we don't really love each other, but I think that I do. And so the Bible is really clear about this. This kind of love, it says in the Song of Songs, that love is as strong as death. Its jealousy is as demanding as the grave. Anyone that's ever gone through any kind of a divorce or like a really hard breakup, you've felt this pain. And so when we see young people going through this, it can be easy to look at it and be like, oh, get over it. But it's the same emotional connection. It's the exact same thing that they're going through. And this happens to young people in high school. This is happening in middle schools now, because we're not giving these young people the tools to have to walk through this the right way. And I didn't have a church. I didn't have anybody coming alongside me going, you should rethink this whole relationship. And so I became obsessed. I became crazy. I'm starting to get depressed a little bit. I'm crutching around school. Now I've got this cast on, and I'm just trying to make it to graduation because I know I'm not going to go to college now. So if I could just get to graduation, I can maybe propose and convince this girl to marry me. And I'll never forget having the conversation. We're having an argument on the phone because I had lost my mind, and her just going, "You're nuts! Like, you're crazy. Who are you? Like, this is not a cart that I want to attach myself," sort of a deal. And me just like pleading with her, please, like, I promise I'll be all right. I'll be okay. I just got to get through this. And when that relationship ended, I became like a shell of a human being. And all of this happened right as I graduated high school. And so here I am, 18 years old, and I've built up this thing, right? I built this plan. I built this elaborate expectation for my life. And the whole thing just sifted through my hands, literally like sand. And I'm just sitting here going, I have no idea how to respond to this. I didn't know how to just like pick myself back up on my bootstraps and figure out another way. And so I became so angry and inward that the anger grew into like this dark cloud. And I heard it explained once. I'm not a medical doctor, so this isn't like a medical term, but depression is anger turned inward, is what I've heard people say that have dealt with this. And so, again, I didn't have the tools to deal with any of this. So I move out of my house. I'm angry at everybody. I'm angry at my mom. I'm angry at my dad. And I got the bright idea somehow along the way that I was going to get angry at God. I believed in God. I didn't know God. I didn't know what he was really like. And so I just became so angry at God, and I would tell him. I remember I would go outside, I would scream at the sky, I would scream at heaven, why? And so things got really, really bad, and I moved into an apartment with a friend from high school who all he did was party and drink and have sex with his girlfriend. And he gave me the room down the hall. We never interacted. And I did what is the worst thing you can do when you're depressed. I started to isolate. And isolation is the church where demons congregate. And so the worst thing you can do when you're going through something, whether you're 18 or whether you're 70, is isolate yourself away from community. But I never had community anyway, so I didn't know what that was. So I began to isolate myself. I began to have really dark thoughts. I began to just have general dark thoughts about my life. And my mom noticed what was going on. And one day when I was over, she said, "Hey, will you sit down for a second? Let's just talk about this." And I just remember being so, all right, whatever. I was just this was kind of my countenance, where everything in life was like, whatever, all right. Just angry all the time. She sat me down and she was like, "What's going on?" And I just told her, I don't want to live anymore. I just don't think I want to be here. It hurts too bad to be here. I'm watching all my friends go to college. I'm watching all my friends get degrees and do all these things and sign up for classes. And I'm just like, I had no, I'm a very creative person. I had no creative ability. Because when you're depressed and you're in survival mode, you can't create. You can't think. You can't imagine a new world. You can't dream. And I'm just sitting there going, I just don't want to be alive. And my mom goes, "This is very serious." She goes, "I never told you this, but your uncle and 2 of your cousins committed suicide, and this runs in the family, and I think I need to take you to the doctor." And I was so apathetic about my life, I just went, all right, whatever. So you would think at this point in my life as an 18-year-old, feeling what I'm feeling, not feeling what I'm not feeling, that it can't get much worse. And so they took me to the emergency room because I was talking about ending my life, and the doctor just kind of yelled at me and said, "This is serious, don't joke about this," and same apathetic, all right, whatever. And thankfully I had parents that really care about me. And my mom said, "I'm going to bring you to the psychiatrist. It's like our family psychiatrist." That's how you know how screwed up my family is. If you have a family psychiatrist, take notes, right? I didn't connect the dots at the time, but I should have been going, man, what was I born into here? But the medical world will actually tell you that these things can be hereditary. And so she was very concerned. And now I'm going, oh great, all these people in our family lineage are like offing themselves. Oh my gosh, like, well, I guess this is just kind of my inheritance. And I just kind of received it. And so at this point, I already feel worthless. I already feel this sense of cloaking shame around, like almost like wearing this dark cloak of shame on my life. So I remember walking into this waiting room, and they've got this little plug-in fountain going, and kind of like boring whatever classical music happening, and waiting to go in, and just looking around going, where am I right now? What in the world? And also not caring at the same time. I remember walking through and sitting down with this doctor who was a Pakistani gentleman, very smart. I remember his glasses and his bald head, sitting there, and he for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, they've run all these tests on me, and they ask all these questions, and then I remember he just kind of gets up and goes out of the room, and I'm just sitting there, and for about 30 minutes, he comes back in the room, and he sits down, and he looks at his clipboard, and he's like, "Well, this is very interesting, but you don't have 1, but 2 mental illnesses, and they're very serious. And based on your test results, you have what's called severe manic depression, and you have what's called bipolar disorder." And he's like, "Now don't worry, because we have some medication that's really good, and we're going to start you on these 2 things right away." And I remember my mom just kind of feeling a sense of relief, but all I remember feeling in that moment for myself was, wow, you are worthless. Like, wow, nobody is actually going to love you. You thought you were screwed up before, now you're flawed for the rest of your life. And the really weird and kind of freaky part of my story is it was after this point in my life that I started hearing voices. Now I know that freaks some of you out a little bit. I don't know if you've ever heard voices before, but the spiritual realm is just as real as the chair that we're sitting in right now. So I know that everybody in this room probably comes from different denominational backgrounds and theological flavors, if you will. But the spiritual world is quite literally just as real as the physical world that we're in, and it surrounds us. I didn't know this at the time, but I know this now. But if you go to India or Africa or Haiti or any of these places, they know it. They're very involved in it, whether it's the church or whether it's evil things that are not related to the church. And so what happened was I was so fragmented and so dark and depressed that it was like this door opened for me to start hearing voices, and they started telling me, you're worthless. You are nothing. Your life is pointless. Why are you even still here? Why are you wasting your time? What's going on? Just do something about this. And I remember at 18 years old, hearing a voice tell me to kill myself and going, and actually listening to the voice and going, that seems like a really good idea. Because when you live with this all day long, this constant hearing voices in your head, thinking that you're worthless, thinking you're hurting, it's like you're in pain. And so what people don't realize about people that are depressed or people that deal with this is they're not just sad, they're hurting. It's like they have a wound. And so the only way that you can think of making it stop is hitting the off switch. And so I'm listening to these voices, and I decide at 18 years old, with my whole life ahead of me, but feeling like I just want out of this misery that I was in, asking God, this is worse than hell. Why are you torturing me right now? What did I do? I've never done anything bad. Thinking that it was God that was doing it, right? It's like the story of the man of the Gadarenes in Mark chapter 4, if you've ever read it. There's this guy, and he's in the tombs, and he's literally a legion of demons is inside of this guy. And it says he's there, he's chained up, the chains couldn't hold him, he's broken the chains, and he's cutting himself with stones, and he's yelling and crying out in the tombs day and night. And it says when Jesus gets off the boat and approaches, he runs towards Jesus, and he falls down, and he looks up, and he literally says, Son of Man, please don't torment me. When you're tormented, you don't know good from evil. You're so fragmented, you think it's God doing it. And a lot of times we go through things in our life, and we actually think, well, it's just the Lord teaching me how to be patient. Sometimes that's true, but sometimes there's actually an attack coming against you, and sometimes it's not God. And we have to have the ability to discern, is this God or not? When you're hurting so bad you can't. I remember being like, why are you doing this to me, God? Now, I believe that God is sovereign. I believe that he's in control, right? I believe that he's got his hand in this somehow, and he's organizing all this. I believe that God's not freaked out. I believe that God's not freaked out by COVID or Delta or anything else. He doesn't get scared of these things. He's not worried. But I was at 18 years old. I wanted this pain to end. And so I made a plan. I'm going to end my life. And I decided to go to a grocery store. It was about 10:30 at night. And I bought a bottle of sleeping pills about this big. And I made this plan that, not when I get home, but tomorrow night after my roommate is gone, because he was planning to leave. I don't want him to come in and try to thwart my plan here. I've had enough of my plans getting stopped at this point, I'm thinking. And I'm going to take the whole bottle. I'm going to swallow every last one, or as many as I can. And I've just got to I have to get the voices to stop. Now this sounds really weird and really intense. And so for about the first 8 years of my life as a believer, I didn't realize how intense this was. And I remember the Lord saying, hey, you need to go and share the story. And you're going, but this is really crazy. It's going to freak people out. But now that I'm kind of reflecting back on this, I'm realizing there's a lot of people that kind of deal with the same stuff. And I thought it was normal. So this is where the story gets really crazy. And this is where the Lord kind of decided, for whatever reason, to look at my life and go, not this one. No, not you. I am not letting this happen to this one. And I know that there are people in this room that maybe you know someone where it wasn't the same story. Maybe you know someone, or someone close to you has committed suicide. I don't know why that happens. I don't know why the Lord doesn't do that for everybody. But I'm going to get into a part of my story that I think is key for everyone in this room to understand. And there were actually human being voices that stepped in and actually helped. And so the very next day at work, this is one of the craziest things that's ever happened in my life, and I'll never forget this, because it dumbfounded me. I've got this plan in my head. When I get home, this is my last day. I didn't tell anybody. When you're really depressed, you don't always tell people. You don't want them to. You don't want anyone to step in when you're really thinking about ending your life. And so my job was, I was the stock boy at a hardware store. And my job was to go back in the warehouse and get the boxes and bring them out to the floor, unpack the stuff, stock the shelves, go back, organize the boxes. And I remember pushing my dolly, my two-wheel cart around, just kind of staring at the floor, eyes kind of glazed over, just miserable, kept my hoodie up all the time, just a sad kid. And I remember being back in the warehouse. I was the only employee back in the warehouse at the time, and it's dark, and I'm down this long aisle, and I'm taking boxes off the shelf, and I'm putting them on my dolly, and I hear footsteps come down the aisle toward me. And it's one of the employees that worked there was a girl named Krista. And her family were all believers. And I had gotten to know her family because I played basketball with her cousin. And so I remember her walking up to me very slowly, and I remember just like kind of just looking down at the floor, just stacking my boxes. And I remember her going, "Hey Brandon, what's going on? How are you?" "I'm fine," I remember saying to her. And I remember her saying, "I can see that you're really going through something right now, and I don't know what it is. And this is going to sound really weird, but I just want you to know that God sees where you're at, and He loves you. And I know it's weird to hear that God loves you, but this was the weird thing. He actually likes you." That's what she said to me. And I remember it took everything within me to fight back from bursting out into tears, because I had no grit for that, and I was dealing with so much emotion. And I remember her just saying that to me and saying, God likes you. I know it sounds crazy, but He really does. And I just wanted you to know that. And there's a level of understanding that we come into when we know that God loves us, right? God loves everybody unconditionally. Yeah, well, I love my aunt, but I don't always enjoy being around her. You know what I'm saying? There's a very real truth in that statement, and that for us who know Him and worship Him and love Him, He likes us. That's what's crazy about the gospel. And when she spoke that, it was like an arrow went through into my heart. And it was like, I've got these voices going on in my head telling me to kill myself. Now I've got this other voice in my head combating them. And you would think it would help, but it almost made it worse, because now I'm going, do I do it? Do I not do it? Do I do it? Do I not do it? Oh my gosh, God likes me? That's crazy. That's weird. I never thought of that. No, kill yourself. Your life's pointless. It's worthless. God doesn't like you. Why would He give you 2 diseases? Good point. Okay. We reason, we converse with these voices, right? We talk, we have these conversations with ourselves. We have these conversations with the enemy. We should be having these conversations with the Lord. And so I started having these conversations, and so I'm so thrown off by this that I go home and I totally forget about my plan to kill myself. And this moment with Krista literally buys me another day, which is crazy. Same thing happens the next day. I wake up the next morning, and immediately these voices start. And when you're really depressed, you go to sleep sad, you wake up sad, you are sad all day. When you're bipolar too, you also have moments where you're maybe not, but then you go right back into it. So I'm dealing with this really heavy stuff, and I'm hating my life. And my little Verizon flip phone buzzes on the floor next to my bed. This is where it gets even weirder. And I remember leaning over, grabbing it off the floor, flipping it open, and it's my friend Hannah. And for whatever reason, she sent me a text, and she goes, "Hey Brandon, my grandpa, who was the pastor at the little Mennonite church that the whole community kind of went to." When I say Mennonite, very contemporary Mennonite, not bonnets and horses, like cool Mennonites, right? These people can cook. Yeah. These are the people that can count in Ohio. And I remember seeing this text. She says, "Hey, my grandpa, Pastor Henry, wants to see you today. He wants you to come to his office and meet with him." And I'm going, "Oh, great. Not only now does my life suck, now I'm in trouble. What did I do? Like, the pastor wants to see me? Like, I came to this church and sat in the back. I didn't even pay attention. I would go with my friend Eric, or I would go with my girlfriend's family, but I was never involved." And I'm like, and I remember thinking though, well, wait, if what Krista said was actually true, maybe I should just try this. The other voices are right back going, "No, it's not true. Don't go. Don't waste your time. Finish what you said you were going to do. Don't let somebody keep stopping your plan." And so I remember I don't have anything really to lose at this point. I'm just going to go. And I remember driving my 1998 black Dodge Stratus into the church parking lot and parking it. And this is a Saturday, there not being a single car but the pastor's car. And going, what have I just signed myself up for? And I remember walking in and walking down the hall, and I knew where the pastor's office was. It wasn't a big church. I remember going in, and I remember sitting down, and Pastor Henry just kind of standing up. And I want you to imagine a short man with a mustache and glasses and gray hair, bigger guy. His suit jacket, I always remember, just went down past his thumb a little bit too far. But the most genuine man you would ever meet in your whole life. Him and his wife had lived as missionaries in the Philippines for many years, and this guy was short, but he was radical. And I remember him standing up and looking excited to see me. And I just remembered that feeling so weird about that somebody would be excited to see me in that moment. And I remember he just told me to have a seat. And I remember he just started talking and asking me about what was going on. And I remember just kind of telling him, I don't want to be alive. Like I don't like my life. It's too painful for me to keep going. And he did something really crazy. I was expecting him to start counseling me. I was expecting him to open his Bible and start reading things to me. And he just started crying. He started crying with me. And I thought that was so weird. I was like, what's happening? And he kind of got closer to me in the chair, and he just started to say, he's like, you're valuable to God. You're so valuable to God. He values you. Your life has so much value. And for the next probably 5 minutes, he just sat there and wept with me. And something happened in that moment that taught me something for later on in my life. When people are going through something, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not sit and give them counsel in a Bible verse. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is weep with them and then remind them just how valuable they are to God. And it shifted, and it was like another arrow went into my heart, but then this time one into my brain. So now I've got these two voices of truth combating all these other voices of lies that are happening in my life. And going, oh my gosh, it was too much. And I remember going back to my apartment that night, and I remember taking the bottle of pills in my hand, and I remember just like throwing it onto the floor because I was just too exhausted mentally and emotionally. And I did something that's really dangerous to do if you're ever going through something that you feel like is a spiritual attack or not. I reached under my bed and I picked out this book that my girlfriend's family had given me called the Bible. And I remember I picked this thing up, and the pages had never been turned. I was like, blow the dust off the thing. And I remember just like, something's up, but I gotta find out what's going on. And I don't know what prompted me to do that. But to this day, it still confounds me. I remember I picked it up and I just opened, right? And I just opened it. And I opened it to Psalm 34. And then the first Bible verse that I ever read, really, was the first Bible verse that I ever memorized. And it's Psalm 34:18, and it says this. It says that the Lord lifts up the brokenhearted and he saves the crushed in spirit. And I just remember reading that and going, wait, that's me. I'm the brokenhearted. I'm the crushed in spirit. And I got this feeling of like almost excitement come over me, like, oh, he's going to do that for me. And this was the first time in my life that I ever had faith. It was really weird. But the Bible says in the book of Hebrews that faith is the assurance of things hoped for. So hope and faith are not the same thing. Faith is quite literally, you are sure that it's going to happen. You are sure that you're going to heaven. You are sure that you know Jesus. Not, I hope I got this Christianity thing right. That's not faith. Faith is you're sure. And I remember in that moment I went, oh my gosh, I did something crazy. And what brokenness will do to you is brokenness will remove your ability to fight truth. And this is why fasting is important, because fasting is like a form of brokenness where it hinders your ability to fight truth off. And I remember reading that, and I remember believing it. It was the craziest thing. I believed what it said. He is going to lift me up, and he is going to save me, because I am the brokenhearted, and I am the crushed in spirit. And it was like, you would think, great, everything's great now. It was like the battle. I was like, the enemy was like, oh no, okay, we gotta pull out the big guns. And I went to sleep. It bought me another night. So now my plan to kill myself had bought me 3 nights. The voices of Krista at work and the voices of Pastor Henry, and now the voice of God's word had bought me 3 nights back on my life. The next day I wake up, and you guys, the same thing again. I'm confused. I'm a little bit excited now, but I'm also just hurting so bad still. And the things that they said, what they did was they gave me ammo to combat what was happening, but they didn't remove the thing that was happening inside of me. They didn't completely remove it. And I remember being in my car, and I remember seeing the bag of prescription medication that the psychiatrist had given me. Seeing it in the door. I had not taken any of it yet because I was like, what's the point of trying to numb this? What's the point of trying to solve it? But I remember looking down at it and just the voices blaring in my head like speakers, volume turned all the way up. See, you're flawed. you're not lovable. What is this? God likes you. You're valuable. You're broken. The only reason you're having these positive thoughts when you read the Bible is because you're bipolar. You're supposed to go up and down. And it was like the diagnosis was speaking against what I had actually been encountering with the Lord. And it just became too much. It became too much for me. And it was toward the end of the day. It was after work. And I grabbed the bottle of pills. I was in my car. And I walked upstairs into my room, and I started just thinking about who would find me, like who would come and find me when I'm not there. Would it be like my mom? Would it be my dad? What would people say? Not really caring what they would say. Should I text my parents? Should I say goodbye? Just kind of thinking about like the end, and thinking about this, and thinking about Psalm 34:18, and thinking about Pastor Henry, and thinking about Krista, and still just hurting so bad, still just going all the way back to the things that I was after, right? I just wanted to be loved, really. And sitting there in my bed, I took the bottle and I took the cap off, and sitting on the edge of my bed, just kind of like this. And I do it, come on, go. Like I hear it. No, you're valuable to God, you're valuable to God. And I remember I lift the bottle, and I put the bottle up to my lips. And it was like, in this moment, my body kind of froze. And I kind of froze. And the Bible says, in the book of Revelation, that the voice of God is like the voice of many waters. And the thing about that, when you think about it, when you think about being next to a really big waterfall, if you've ever been by a really big waterfall, or even a small waterfall, if you get close enough, it drowns out everything else. And that's what that means. That the voice of God is what drowns out all the noise. And I remember, frozen in midair, I got the bottle right here, and I hear this other voice that I had not ever heard before. It wasn't like the voices over here telling me to kill myself. It wasn't necessarily like the voice of Krista or Pastor Henry, but it was a different, totally other voice. And it froze me in my tracks, and it said, "Will you let me love you? Will you let me try?" And I just remember sitting there going, this was my moment, like, I don't know. And I remember going, thinking, all of a sudden I have a vision. I've never had a vision before, okay? This is where it gets crazy. I didn't know these supernatural things could happen. I didn't know any of this. I didn't grow up in a charismatic church or any church. And I see this man, and he's in the woods, and he's in agony. He's agonizing, and he's hunched over, and he's pleading, and he's saying, why, over and over again. And I didn't know why I was seeing that. And I remember saying to God, why are you showing me someone that's hurting more than I am? I don't care about them. I care about me. I'm in pain. And I didn't know what was happening. But later on, after I started reading this, I realized that he was showing me a picture of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, taking on what I was feeling, and taking on his body what I was going through. And we all talk about the cross, and our sins are forgiven. But what we don't talk about enough is that all of the iniquity and the sin and the pain of every single person in humanity was laid on him. He took it on his physical self. And he was trying to show me that not only I see you and I feel sorry for you, I have felt what you're feeling right now. I have felt it in my body. I took it on my body so that I could remove it from you. I didn't know this when this was happening. And I'm sitting there, and I've got this bottle, and I'm hearing this voice. And I just decided to do the craziest thing ever, and I decided to give him my yes. And I say yes. I say, yes, God. I want you to love me. And as I said that, it was like a bolt of lightning came down in my bed, hit me, went throughout my whole body. It was like the really weird way to describe this, like liquid love was like poured into me, and I felt things go out of me, and I felt this presence go into me. And I remember falling back on the bed. I remember just weeping, and I started laughing, and I started weeping, and it was the weirdest thing that I'd ever experienced in my life. And I'd experienced some pretty weird things up to that point with hearing voices, and all I can remember is just feeling God's love for me. and not having to work for it, and not having to earn it, and not having to strive for it. And the next thing I remember is just laying in my bed, and I'm laying there in the sun, and the sun coming up from the next day. And it was literally like a Mr. Scrooge story, right? Like Ebenezer Scrooge. And I remember the sun waking me up on my face. And I remember getting up, and I remember that the window had been open from the night before, and just the screen was closed. And I remember hearing birds, like going, what is my life? But it's true. And I remember I got out of bed, and I felt this feeling that I'd never felt before, and I felt affection for God. And I'd never even felt affection for myself up until that point. And I remember feeling like affection for God, affection for a person that I couldn't see. And it was the weirdest thing ever. And I remember kind of just looking around and jolting myself out of this stupor and going, wait, I'm not sad. Is this just part of the bipolar? Am I on like an upswing or a downswing right now? Well, what? I remember going, either way, I'm going to ride this wave. And I remember just feeling loved and feeling seen. And I remember all of a sudden, like, the desire to want to, like, have to get my girlfriend back, it was gone. And all the anger that I had felt about basketball and about all the stuff that had gone wrong in my life, it was gone. And I wasn't angry anymore. And I remember feeling the sense of overwhelming gratitude for Jesus. And still not knowing a ton about it. And this is the thing that I love about theology. Like, you can know everything about the Bible, but that doesn't mean that you know Jesus. And I just remember loving this person that I didn't know everything about, and like him loving me back, knowing I didn't have all of this right yet. And so what happened after that was I went back to work. My life started to get really interesting, and I started reaching out to people from this little Mennonite church. They started inviting me to Bible study. I started showing up and bringing my Bible. And I remember we're reading through the book of John. And remember, I'm a new Christian. Like, I don't know anything. And I remember going, guys, this is talking about me. I remember feeling set up a little bit. And this thing that never made sense before, all of a sudden, like, I was obsessed with reading it and learning about it. And I remember being around my mom and explaining to her a little bit about, like, what was going on. And her going, you got to go back to the doctor. This is true. You got to go back to the doctor, Brandon. Like, trust me, this runs in the family. She scheduled us an appointment with the psychiatrist. And I remember sitting in the waiting room this time with like a smile on my face, like just kind of sitting there ready to meet this guy. And we go back in, and he's like, good to see you, blah blah blah. And they do the tests on me again. And I'm there for like an hour and a half or 2 hours, and they ask me all the questions, and my mom's just kind of sitting there, and he's like, yeah, this is very normal with like a person with your stuff. So like have a good period, have a happy period, but don't worry. Almost like assuring me that like I'm still messed up. Like, and I remember after all of that, he walks back out of the room, and we're just waiting, and he comes back in, and this time he's looking at his clipboard like this, and he's kind of like scratching his head a little bit, and he just looks at his clipboard, and my mom's like waiting, and he's like, well, I don't know how to explain this, but this is the exact words that he used. He goes, you seem to have been cured. But let's give it 6 months, because sometimes what you have, it can lay dormant for 5 to 6 months. So if you have another episode, you need to come back, and you need to keep taking your medication. This was in 2006 when all this happened, so I've never had to go back to the doctor. I've never had a depressed or a suicidal thought since then. I'm giving you guys a really fast version, but after that, I remember feeling so thankful and feeling like every Christian that I meet probably feels the same thing that I feel. If you're a Christian, you must have had the same. You must have had the same encounter that I've had. Like, don't you love Jesus? Like, isn't he awesome? Isn't he amazing? And like wanting to tell people about it. And people were like looking at me like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, well, I just literally got rescued. Like, didn't you too? And they're like, well, I just kind of like grew up like just being taught to, do good things, and like I'm a Christian. Oh yeah, then like what did he rescue you from? And I remember people being like, well, he hasn't rescued me from anything. I'm like, what? wait, this is the same religion? And like, just being so shocked. And I remember feeling so overwhelmed, like, I got to do something for God. Like, I can't go to college. Like, I have to go find poor people in Africa. That's literally where my brain went. And I remember I signed up for this thing. It was a discipleship training school that I had heard about from someone at my church called Youth with a Mission. And they send you out to some faraway place. They train you for 10 weeks, and then you go on an outreach. And I thought it was just an outreach. And so I signed up for this thing, and the church helped me raise all this money. And I go out to this thing, and I find out when I get there that it's actually a school for teaching people how to walk with the Lord. And for 10 months, I was just infused with the Bible and how to hear God's voice and how to share your testimony and how to read the Bible and how to understand the Bible and how to do all these things. So when I got back to my church, they quite literally didn't recognize me. One, because I'd grown my hair out and looked a little bit like a hippie. They quite literally didn't recognize me, and they asked me to get up in front of the church and share. And I remember my ex-girlfriend's family and all these people that had worked at the hardware store, they all went to this church, right? And I remember looking as I'm sharing in front of the whole church, and I remember them all just weeping and crying because they had seen the before and after. So to fast forward, I stayed involved with that ministry for 3 or 4 years after that, to the point where I was the first person in my family to come to know the Lord. I then shared the gospel with my younger brother and all my siblings, and they came to know the Lord. And then my younger brother went out to the same ministry, and so I was out there visiting him one time. And we're sitting in this room with a couple older people that are there visiting on base. And they're traveling ministers, these older people, and they're telling us the story. And I'm sharing my testimony. And this lady goes, I got to tell you one of our testimonies, if you're going to think this is crazy. Well, I was born, or when our daughter was born, she was delivered, and the doctor looked inside of my womb and said, there's another baby in there. And I'm going, this is crazy. Yeah, this is in the 80s. Like, do you think they would have known? They've had the technology to see if there's twins. And they ended up having twins, and they found out shortly after the second daughter was born with cerebral palsy. And the doctors told her that they were like, yeah, the doctors told us that she would never walk. And so she was telling us this story about how she had a very similar moment with God, where she said, God, she prayed this prayer, and they laid hands on their daughter, and she just said, I know that she may not walk here on earth, but I know that she'll walk one day with you in heaven. And I remember we're all just like sitting there crying, and she said that the craziest thing happened about a week later. Because they're twins, she saw the one twin pull herself up on the stairs and start moving her legs. And she said, oh, that's Charity, that's my daughter. Yeah, where's the other girl at that can't walk? And she looked and she goes, oh my gosh, that's the girl over there crawling that the doctor said would never crawl. Same situation. Takes her to the doctor, they run all the tests, totally and fully healed. And as she's telling us the story, Celeste walks in around the corner. And stand up. Show them that you can walk. I remember thinking, first I remember seeing her and going, whoa. And that turned into another adventure story for another day, but we ended up meeting and connecting, getting to know each other, and I ended up talking her into marrying me. 10 years this September. So I say all that, and I share that testimony, and the point of a testimony, like I said, is I don't know what kind of things people in this room are struggling with or going through. The point is, when you hear someone else's story with God, it's not to compare and go, well, that didn't happen for me. It's to compare and say, you can do that for me. Okay, this is what he's really like. This is how powerful God really is. And so I have just, ever since that encounter with the Lord, I've just lived my life that way, just believing for God to do wild and amazing things. And I keep a miracle journal of all the crazy things that we've seen God do. And I just wanted to encourage everybody today that I think that what you guys are all doing is a miracle. And I think that, like Pastor, if you're not struggling with mental illness or depression and you're not in that dark place, you are the Pastor Henry for someone. You are the Krista. And to just stop for that one person. That's all we need to do. It's to stop and give a food bag to one person. That's amazing. There's no such thing as not doing a big enough thing for God. It took one person hearing that I was hurting and saying, hey, come to the church today and just let me sit with you. And so I'll just go ahead and close in prayer, and then whatever happens next happens. Yeah. God, thank you so much for everybody here and for their patience and letting me kind of fly through a very long story. Jesus, thank you that you're so powerful. Holy Spirit, thank you that you're in the room. Jesus, you are the one that you say you walk among the lampstands, and this is the lampstand. This is the church. This is a bright place. This is a place for those trapped in darkness, and you don't just set us in these places. You come and you walk amongst them, and thank you that you're in the room right now, Lord. And God, I just want to pray one thing for everybody in this room that hasn't encountered your goodness in such a way to make them truly have affection for you. That you would do that you would win all of our hearts in this room in such a way that we really do fall in love with you, and we really do not fall in love with doing ministry or accomplishing anything, but we really would keep our eyes just fixed on you because you're enough and because you're amazing and because you are the God of miracles. Thank you for everybody in here. I just want to bless them and bless everybody in here throughout their week and all the things that are going on that we're all walking through. God, thank you that you are so capable, and not only that, not only do you care, and not only are you capable, but you like us. You like the things that are happening in our lives. As flawed as we are and as broken as we are, you do lift up the brokenhearted. You do save the crushed in spirit. And so we just want to bless Pastor Brian and everybody here in Jesus' name.
Amen.